Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at PTV World, and with me are Farooq Badafi and Raja Faisal. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the current economic situation of the country with a very key development with the State Bank of Pakistan deciding to maintain the key policy rate and keep it unchanged at 22%. This is something that most analysts were also expecting and also comes ahead of the scheduled visit by the IMF's delegation in line with the review of the standby arrangement that Pakistan has entered with the IMF. This is going to be, of course, an important review given the current circumstances the country is going through, and whether or not the kind of conditions that we're taking a look at the moment will be in line with the review. There are hopes, of course, that after this review is completed, it will open new avenues and channels for more inflow in the country from various avenues. Whether or not that is the case, of course, remains to be seen, with, of course, also inflation seen again at a high last month, with the numbers in October still coming in, but expectedly going down, not just this month, but in the upcoming months as well. At the same time, we also know that winter, of course, is fast approaching, and there seems to be a decision regarding increasing gas tariffs in the country as well, and how exactly that is going to go down with the already difficult situation that many people are facing is also, of course, a key decision. This, of course, is in line with the IMF, but I want to understand then, of course, what exactly is this going to have an impact on, and what exactly is going to be the condition that Pakistan will be facing, especially in line with the kind of global indicators in the conflict in the Middle East that keeps pointing towards a volatile situation regarding fuel prices in the country. There is some good news at the crop fronts, with the initial estimates seeming to be encouraging for Kharif crops, and we're going to be seeing and exploring that further in detail as to how that's going to impact the coming months. There also is, of course, the issue with regards to food security in Pakistan, especially with the effect of wheat and the import of wheat to meet the shortages of demand in the country. So this is going to be our discussion in the first segment of the show today. And our next one is going to be taking a look at the very important decision earlier taken by the Apex Committee with regards to illegal foreign nationals residing in Pakistan, including Afghan nationals, for which, of course, there was a deadline earlier given that is expiring tomorrow. A lot of concerns have been raised, not just from Afghanistan and the international community, but also from Pakistan, with a number of people also approaching the Human Rights Council and also talking about a petition with reference to various international norms and traditions that this particular decision seems to be in violation of. However, we saw the Foreign Office spokesperson come ahead and speak and identify that there is, in fact, no such violation, and that everything is in line with the principles of international norms and standards and in line with domestic laws of Pakistan. She also has clarified that this decision does not impact those residing legally in Pakistan, and that Pakistan's support to the Afghan nationals in the 40 years that it has given space for the refugees speaks for itself. So we're going to be taking a look at what this means, and also the way that, of course, the statement that has come in from the Foreign Office was in response to that of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, who have called on Pakistan to sort of reevaluate this particular decision and reconsider the kind of impact that this will have, as they say, disproportionately on the huge number of Afghan nationals that will be impacted and then potentially be subjected to human rights violations back in their home country. So we're going to be taking a look at all of that at the end of the show. Of course, Farooq and Faisal are going to be part of the discussion. And for our first segment regarding the economic situation of the country, we've been joined by Dr. Hakan Najib, a senior economist, and he's joined us online. Thank you very much, Dr. Hakan, for being part of the discussion today. And it's just a couple of days more till the IMF review and the team that comes to the country to take a look at the current situation. Before we talk about the monetary policy and other conditions at the moment, where do you think Pakistan stands in terms of the review, and what are going to be the likely factors that are going to be discussed?
Sana, thanks for having me. I've always maintained this, that Pakistan's prosperity depends on IMF. IMF is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for Pakistan's long-term prosperity. But since it's a necessary condition that we should stick with the IMF, I've always, we've talked for quite some time, and I've always been saying this, that Pakistan should adhere with the IMF, whether that was the last program or the current one. So we are heading to the first review of the program. So let me say at the outset, things don't look that uncomfortable. On all the areas that Pakistan is going to be measured on the September 30th targets. Let's start with the most easy one, which is our fiscal side. On the fiscal side, the FPR target was 1977 that we had sought with the IMF. For 30th September, I think we are near 2043. So we've comfortably surpassed that. We had a target of having a slight deficit on the primary. I think we are in primary surplus. So on the fiscal side, things are looking all right. And that's a good comfort. Then we have a target of how much monies do we give out on the income support program. And what I've heard on the early estimates is that we are also comfortable. I think it was 87.5 billion rupees that we had to disperse in the first quarter. I think we are well above that figure as well. Then there is a ceiling on the government's guarantee, which is 4,000 billion that government will not surpass. So just to explain to this, PIA comes to the government and says, please give us a guarantee. We want to get a loan. We are not able to get it on our balance sheet. It's very easy for you to give us a guarantee. It's not that easy. So today, a lot of corporate sector people who are hearing this, the corporate sector that is run by the government or owned by the government, we have a what we call ceiling on the amount of government guarantees that we can issue within a time frame. So till September 30th, the ceiling was 4,000 billion. We can issue another new 50 billion of guarantees. So for December 30th, the target is 4050. So you start to understand how we work with the IMF. Today, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail so that people actually understand that this is a very quantitative discussion that transpires with the fund. So then, no borrowing from the state bank. The government has not borrowed from the state bank, or all our borrowing has been through the commercial bank. So I think we are comfortable there as well. So we've discussed mainly the fiscal targets till now. Then there are two other areas, Sana, that are discussed. One is the energy stock. What is the circular debt buildup that we will do over the quarter? I don't have the numbers. I haven't seen the numbers, but I am generally told that with the campaign that has been run, we are well within the increase in circular debt in the power sector. So that was there is a figure that is agreed with the fund. I'm generally told, but we'd have to wait and see that figure. So if we are good on that, today the gas price didn't go through the cabinet. I'm hoping maybe you guys have some more information. I haven't had a chat with anyone yet. I'm hoping that they are trying to figure out how to do those changes. But if you go through the IMF document, there is an implicit, not an explicit, but an implicit agreement that gas prices will be passed as determined by OGRA. OGRA
Yeah.
determined it on the 30th of June. So 1st of July onwards, we should have passed. Now we said 1st of November. It's going back to the ECC. I'm hoping that they are trying to make sure that they do even a better job of who to increase, where to increase, or maybe industrial increase is different in different sectors. They're trying to
Yeah.
create a platform. I don't know, but if you guys know, you can. So that's another thing that should go through before 2nd of November or around the time that the fund is here. Then
Yeah.
Sana, there are
Rest.
yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to comment that reportedly the ECC has actually gone for an increase in tariffs, which is going to affect different sections differently, and we'll look at the exact percentage as well. But so far, it seems that this is going ahead in the right direction.
And so hopefully, once the cabinet approval is there, we should, because this is the explicit agreement that we have with the fund, and we should, because otherwise we are now hearing a number, and it makes me very uncomfortable when I hear that number.
Yeah.
2,100 billion rupees of kind of circular debt in the gas sector. 5 years ago, this number was near zero. I mean, that should worry every policymaker who deals with the energy sector. I don't deal directly with the energy sector, more on the fiscal and the economic side, but that's a seriously worrying number. I mean, by any stretch of imagination. what's that, $7 billion of circular debt. So I'm hoping that with the price increase, the flow that is being added every year, which is 400 billion rupees without doing the pricing reform. So the pricing reform is an absolute necessity to curb the buildup of 400 billion rupees in the 12 months starting 1st of July. We've already delayed it by 3 to 4 months, so we should go ahead and do this. I mean, I know it's hard for a lot of people who have to pay a higher tariff, but I'm hearing that at least 57 to 60% of the people who consume in the lower tiers have not been subjected to a rise, but there has been one rise. Their fixed meter charges have gone up from 10 rupees to 400 rupees. So, just being clear on that. And the rest of the rise is towards the higher end segments consuming consumption by the higher income echelons, the commercial and the industrial sectors, which is rather good in a sense. And someday, we'll talk about this, why that is good. And I hear that the people who sell the roti and the naan, the tandoors have been kept out of the increase as well. So that's something that will go through. Then, Sana, there are the targets on the monetary side. So monetary side targets are very important. What is our net international position on the reserves? It's a very, very important figure. It's a big negative, and I hope that negative is met with the kind of reserves that we hold. Then there are the net domestic assets of State Bank, the stock of the foreign currency swaps. I'm told that the swaps position of the State Bank, without sounding technical, that's something important figure, and I'm told that the 4,200 figure that needed to be met is met on the swap side as well. So that gives us comfort. So all in all, we are in the ballpark. But I think the tough negotiations will be on the external fund flows, which have not been as comfortable as one would have imagined. I think the fund will also come back and say this. When we did the program, we were on $8.7 billion of reserves. Today, the State Bank reserves are somewhere in the ballpark of 7.4, 7.5. So there has been a reduction, and I am assuming that the inflows, the commercial inflows, $3 to $5 billion, the multilateral inflows, the Geneva pledges, $9 to $10 billion, all this will come under scrutiny as to how to move on them so that there is more comfort on the external side of Pakistan to handle. Just before I finish this part, people will say that if all this is met, then we are all good. We are all good once these things are agreed and met. But always remember that program discussions are also forward-looking. So you will have new benchmarks for the 30th of December. You will have adjustments. That's how the IMF programs work. If they see there is an issue on the external, they will adjust. They will macro model, they will adjust. If they think inflation is still running hotter than they had imagined, they will adjust on the monetary side. They will adjust on the fiscal side. These adjustments are done on macro modeling that the IMF has. There's very specific models that they run on the country. And you will have some new performance criteria, some new indicative targets, some new structural benchmarks. All these things will be new. That's a normal procedure to stick with the IMF program. It's a quarterly program. It's quarterly updated. The numbers are quarterly updated. The criteria are quarterly updated. The benchmarks, the MEFP, the Memorandum of Economic and Financial Policies, a huge document, is quarterly updated. I think that's where we stand.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Haqqan, for that comprehensive analysis. And I may be wrong, Faisal, but I believe you've been eager to ask a question.
Yeah, there was, one thing I was quite curious about, and that was about, gradual improvement in the large-scale manufacturing. And of course, while I was listening to Dr. Haqqan very keenly, I heard obviously about the changes that can be arriving very soon in terms of energy tariffs. And at the same time, we know that when it comes to exports our exports, they have a lot to do with the stability of the dollars. So I was just curious about how tricky would it be in the coming future to keep the things balanced at the same time knowing the fact that the improvements were made within the large scale manufacturing, sir.
So Faisal has asked three very, very important areas that we need to discuss. One, the LSM, Faisal, rightly in July and August has picked up on the average by 0.5% cumulative, the 2 month average. The August numbers are even better compared to the last year and compared on month. So there is a slight uptick there, which is a very healthy sign for the economy. It is also shown in the uptake on the energy side. The energy consumption has increased. So the POL consumption has increased. So the high frequency indicators are showing some signs of what you call revival is a bigger word. I don't want to use that, but some signs of coming back to life after being negative for a number of months. The Kharif crops, the early estimates, as Sana rightly said, of wheat, cotton, and rice are very healthy. Whenever the agriculture works, it feeds into the other sectors. So that's another good omen for Pakistan. These estimates on the Kharif crop output are also supported by the high fertilizer offtake that we are seeing in the previous months and the better availability of water. So cement output is also better, just to keep going. So having seen all this, the important question is that if we continue like this and still there is an energy rise. Now on the energy front, Faisal, the price pass-throughs in the electricity sector, which mainly affect the industry, have gone through. On the POL side, you've seen a downward correction of 48 rupees on petrol in 2 weeks, and you've seen about a 36 rupee correction in 2 weeks, the cumulative correction on the high-speed diesel, despite that we increased PDL by 5 rupees. So it was actually 41, but we took 5 rupees away. So that's the kind of increase. I'm happy to say this in a sense that the international price of Brent, which had gone to 95, down to 84, but back to 91 when the conflict started in the Middle East, is right now. And I was just seeing the numbers before I came to your program, and I have just opened my screen for the numbers, is down back to $89 a barrel. Now, that's reassuring in the sense that the markets are behaving in a way that this is going to be a confined kind of an activity in terms of the conflict, and it will not spread likely and subside in the coming days or weeks or whatever. So they are not seeing a spike there. That's a very healthy sign. Otherwise, a spike in the petroleum products would hurt in terms of our ability to buy because of course on the dollar front, as I said, Faisal, that's the most important discussion we're going to have with the IMF. I think the
Right.
top of the agenda will be how many dollars are going to flow in the next
Yeah.
6 to 8 months up to 30th of June, whether we'll be able to make the $9 billion reserve mark. That's the agreement with the IMF. On 30th of June 2024, Pakistan's FX, after having paid 23 to $24 billion of debts and rollovers and $4 to $5 billion of current account, should hold about $9 billion. So you're absolutely right that this is going to be the key area of discussion. Let's see that the Pakistan government has a solid plan on this. On this front, I've always been saying that the finance team must come very, very clear to the markets and indicate this is a high risk area for Pakistan, that we have the 23, $24 billion in the kitty. These are the areas where we're going to be picking up money because people feel that the $1.5 billion odd bond that we have in the collection is not going to come through. I tend to agree in the environment, both international, which is not comfortable. The price would be very, very high for Pakistan. I don't think we would be able to. We also, the $3 to $5 billion from UAE, Middle East, and Chinese banks has to come back to us. So, Faisal, yes, this is a serious area of concern. And let's get some more clarity as the government, the EAD, the finance division finalizes the monies that are to be brought back or
Right.
brought in new to the country on all these levels and bilateral partners, the rollovers and everything, bilateral, commercial, multilateral flows. And then I shouldn't forget if hopefully we can get some investment in terms of the SIFC work that is going on, and that would be like a icing on the cake. So that's the whole scenario where we stand right now.
Right. Dr. Saab, I'm glad that you have answered these questions. Earlier, you were talking about gas prices or gas hike. So far, media reports suggest that that hike has been, momentarily stalled, but then the government perhaps is going to pass it on within a few days. Regarding gas sector, sir, usually when we talk about circular debt, we have been debating circular debt in energy sector, particularly power sector. But this help us understand or unpack the gas sector circular debt. What are the variables? What are the agents that might be causing this? Because this seems to be something that is actually creating a lot of problem now.
Absolutely. Patavi sir, and I commented earlier that for me, this is a lot of concern. I always knew that we had these issues in the past sector, where in the past sector, the line losses were higher than what was allowed by NEPRA. The T&D losses, the collections were lower. There were inefficiencies. There were short payments by the government on subsidy. The higher subsidy budget came through. Then we gave some monies to the industry or agriculture that weren't paid for. So all in all, we were to accumulate 590 billion rupees in this year, and the total was standing in about 2,500 billion rupees. But on the gas sector, just go back a few years, we had ring fenced our LNG. So one of the factors that is coming in is that we did not keep our promise on ring fencing the RLNG. What that meant was that we diverted RLNG to domestic, which was costing a much higher rate, Patafi Saab, and we were selling to domestic at a much cheaper rate. The molecules didn't get paid for, and so part of that started becoming circular debt. Part of the circular debt, the second part mainly came from the fact that whenever OGRA kind of hiked the tariff, we did not make the pass through. It was, I think, only February that we started doing this. I think it's been more than 2 years that we didn't pass. And don't quote me on that, but there's been a substantive time period of.
Yeah, we don't have to code actually.
We don't have to quote you. You are on your side. Go ahead.
Yeah, on a lighter note, we didn't pass the we didn't pass the tariff. So we started doing that in February, I think. And now again, as San and I were talking earlier, look at the fact that 1st of July, we were supposed to pass this through. I think we should have. I agree it's a difficult thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. We have to recover the cost. It's going to cost us 400 billion rupees. So it's like what, 30 billion rupees a month or 35 billion rupees a month that we are losing if we don't pass this. So that's the second part that is hurt. Then the UFG, the losses that occur in the system. I think OGRA is allowed 7.5 to 8%, but we are running somewhere at 11%. So that unidentified gas which gets lost in the system also kind of adds up into the circular debt. And then, of course, the SUI companies both operate in the government sector. We've always now come to the conclusion that in the government sector, we cannot run companies which are efficient, and they need to go on under the hammer towards privatization. SUI companies have been on the privatization list for a long time, but we haven't been able to move on them. Many people don't think about it like that. But, I think that is the only, kind of thing left for us to run these companies efficiently. And then these SUI companies' payments are also held by other state-run companies to which they supply gas. And their delays kind of add up on the circular debt as well. And we see this figure of 2,100 billion. And I think if you add what is called late payment surcharge, but Afisa, when you get the bill, if you don't pay on time, there's a late payment surcharge. So on all the unpaid bills of the SUI companies, there is a 600-700 late payment surcharge, which probably will not come, but 2,100 seems to be the authentic number of this. So very worrying. I hope we can quickly, before the IMF comes into town, pass through the gas tariff as best as it is to be done. Please remember, by not doing this, we don't dig. We don't go and have wells in the country where we can produce this. Our gas production used to be 4,200 mmcfd just a couple of years ago. Today, that figure is down to 3,300 mmcfd. So all in all, gas sector, like the power sector, is in need of a serious reform. And I'm hoping that in the next 5 years, when a new setup comes in, they will be able to take this forward.
Right. Dr. Hakan, earlier you also spoke a little bit about the global factor, especially the conflict in the Middle East and the kind of impact that it may or may not have. And I want to understand, when we take a look at, of course, what the crisis is and how it's unfolding right now, of course, this wasn't part of anybody's plan. And then, of course, the various other perhaps indicators that are uncertain. How much of this is going to be factored in or is inherently factored in the plan that Pakistan has with the IMF? Or is going to be part of the review, and what sort of then input can we particularly expect from the delegation, given that the circumstances are different? For example, the 9 billion target that you earlier also quoted, are these targets fixed in terms of whatever is the global outlook, or do they inherently have already factored in potential uncertainties?
And Dr. Saab, I'm adding to the pile, although my question is not related to this one, but I wanted you to answer this. My way of picking back on what you were saying. We have heard that steel mills has been excluded from privatization list. Why would that be? Does it make any sense, sir? Please go ahead.
So the first question, so Sana, let's look at the shocks that the world has seen in the last, a couple of years. So start with COVID, go down to the Russian-Ukraine war, go to the global commodity cycle that took place where the prices went really high. Now look at the new issue that has arisen in the Middle East. These are all global shocks which change global outlooks, which change global inflation, which change global growth frameworks, which change, global policy rates, and we live in a global village.
Yeah.
So quite a bit of impact. If I've gone through so many shocks to you, and look at the fact that we've had a 5.25% increase in the policy rate, in the Fed policy rate. So just think how much more expensive it has become for companies to, store Pakistani products. Just, trying to be really easy to explain this. So if someone buying would now need a much higher interest rate if they were to store. And the demand has been, the whole idea of hiking interest rate in the West is to, bring demand down. So if demand is down, we are hit there. So if our exports are hit, the export number changes, right? So the $9 billion target kind of changes. So Sana, you've very smartly put this through. Would this number get revised? So let's keep this in mind that if our remittances are down, if our exports are going to be globally impacted, if all the monies that I talked to you that have to be accumulated by Pakistan are, looking tough maybe because emerging markets are finding it hard considering that the developed world is paying so well. So would the 9 billion target get a revision? Possibly, Sana. That's why I say it is a quarterly review, but it is a quarterly update of the MEFP. And in that quarterly update, if the $9 billion revenue or the $9 billion, State Bank reserves target doesn't get reviewed, then something else would get reviewed. The way to get there, if we are not getting the bond or if there is shortfall on the exports, then some other measures would have to be taken by Pakistan, curtail current account or go to the commercial markets. So something would happen. So this is exactly today's program has really, our discussion has covered how does the IMF program work and why do people think, oh no, new conditionalities have come. They come because the $9 billion target is not being met through the instruments that we agreed earlier. So the fund would now think of some new instruments. So let's keep our eyes open. And when the new document comes in, this is something I've noted down. The next time when we have that new figure, we will discuss what that is. So you're right, all these factors will affect. I'm also surprised, Patafi Saab, why PSM is out. Honestly, I have now heard the explanation which says that the buyers have backed out, but that was back a year or 2 year or 3 years ago when we started looking at the financial advisors work to move ahead with the PSM privatization. I've also heard that the MOIP with the board of steel mill is now thinking of reviving the mill, going with one of the friendly countries, I think China or Russia, to do something. I think we are still in the uncharted territory of no clear decision coming. We have to wait and see. I think it's been taken off the privatization list because we closed the mill while ago. So probably revival is looking difficult. To sell it as is looking difficult. Probably that's why I need more clarity on this.
Yeah. Dr. Khakan, it might sound very cruel of me asking this question from you, but as we know that it has been largely obviously reported by Pakistan that nearly 800,000 people left in a year and a half to the other countries, and of course 450,000 of them, they were professionals of different fields. Of course, they are in the foreign countries finding jobs and they might be at the jobs. This, this scenario, would it help Pakistan while having negotiations with the IMF, especially related to when highlighting that there is there is surety that Pakistan would be increasing its overseas remittances in coming fiscal year, sir?
And Dr. Saab, linked to this is also the question whether we have become a talent-repellent economy.
So honestly, we are not producing jobs because we are not growing. I mean, that's pretty simple. So now you can call it talent repellent or however one wants to think about it. Jobs are created when economies grow, whether it's in the manufacturing sector or the agriculture sector. Our FY23 growth is near zero. Some estimates are negative, but let's say it's near zero. So we have not grown. The floods hit the livestock. Floods also destroyed the agriculture, and our macro instability, our delays in getting to the IMF, and revamping or reforming the economy all have put in place a kind of a slowness or, keeping the economy in shackles. So obviously new jobs are hard to come by. People have to find jobs. We have a youth bulge. And then the second thing that we do, and that's up to us, right? If we're still growing at 2.7% on the population, the new children born are somewhere 6, 7, 8 million every year. So if such a large bunch of people are entering the workforce, we are obviously not producing those number of jobs. Now, migration is a double-edged sword. I know people think of remittances, and our remittances certainly. When I joined Finance Ministry and we put together the PRI, the Pakistan Remittance Initiative, we were at $9-10 billion. Today, we think of $28 to $30 billion. So certainly, over the last 10 years, we've literally, we are nearly, 2.5 times our remittances. Having said that, today I think it's become a talent losing country. We've lost a lot of brain power. And it's the accountants, the engineers, the thought-provoking doctors, everyone. There is no doubt about it. The sooner we realize that, the sooner we put the country into macro stability and onto a growth reform strategy, which, Patafi Saab, I mean, and this I say, candidly, if a new incoming government doesn't have a growth strategy for Pakistan, it will be very, very hard to find comfort in the long run. It has now become imperative to take those steps beyond just putting in financing, beyond the IMF. And I started my talk with you that IMF is a necessity, Pakistan. It's a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition for Pakistan's growth. That growth framework is a different ball game altogether. And unless we can put our house in order on the energy, as we've talked about, on the deregulation of the economy, on the privatization front, on the efficiencies in the agriculture sector, this job creation would be hard to come or hard to sustain.
Right.
So you are
Very
absolutely
quickly,
right. These are
very
very
quick,
extremely
Dr.
difficult
Saab,
topics.
very quick follow-up regarding job creation. I understand that we might not be growing as an economy, but is there also the case of patronage and privilege that might be actually impeding from getting new talent into the workforce? Because whosoever is in power, they usually end up actually installing their own favorites.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, we are far from being a truly merit-oriented economy, a merit-oriented society. It is, if we have not been able to find the level of competence that we should induct, both in the public sector and the private sector, you are absolutely right in that whatever talent is even available in the country, we have not fully utilized, and it's
Right,
time to have
absolutely. And
newer
thank you very much, Dr. Hakan. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your views and giving so much detail on a vast number of topics that, of course, are affecting our economy, and more is to be discussed once the IMF is here, of course, and in the follow-up to that. We're also going to be taking a look at the deadline that expires tomorrow with regards to the residence of illegal foreign nationals in the country, after which there seems to be strict action taken. And this is, of course, something that was decided in an EPICS committee meeting earlier by the caretaker Prime Minister as well. And Farooq, when we take a look at this particular decision and the fact that there are a number of people who have been criticizing the decision, and now we've also seen a lot of people from within Pakistan also talk about violation of international laws. At the same time, the Foreign Office spokesperson has clarified that there is actually no such violation. But yet again, we have actually seen a statement coming in also from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. So I don't understand which is what at the moment, in terms of why is it then that that the United Nations body is talking to us with regards to this decision, if it is already in line with the principles of international norms and domestic laws.
Right. I think that the UN response is primarily, based on humanitarian concerns rather than legal concerns.
Okay.
Right? The fact is that Pakistan is not a signatory to the law, actually international law concerning this issue. But having said that, Pakistan has been very generous host for quite some time. Now the problem is at this moment, because our economy keeps on sinking, and whenever, the way it is broken, whenever we are sinking, nobody comes to the rescue, and we are told that you have to actually adhere to certain merit-based principles. Similarly, in war and terror also, we have been abandoned for quite some time. We keep on fighting terrorism, but who is there to actually support that effort? It becomes very difficult for any country to ask us to actually keep on being as generous as possible while we actually are facing this kind of meltdown because of these factors that we have been including in the economy and the society. I'm not saying that all illegal immigrants are, either criminal or they are violent or, for that matter, evil. I'm not saying that at all. But the humble submission is that when you have your own home, how many people can you adopt inside that home when you are worried about feeding your own family? Yeah. When you are supposed to actually take care of your own house? So I think that people will keep on criticizing. The only concern that I have is how it is executed, how humane that is, and how quick that can be done. If that is done, in those parameters, I think nobody can object to it in any way. You know, regarding international law, in any case, international law, whatever that might be, if it could have done something, it would have saved the children in Gaza and Israel also.
There's also this conversation around the fact that the Apex Committee is not a legal body to make this decision, and this is overruling the decision that taken in 2017 by an elected government. What do you think on that?
Right. The point is that how exactly is it actually created? It is created through an executive action. So who is executive action coming from? It is coming from the executive, right? It is coming from the government. So why would this not be any kind of legal body? It is there. I mean, you can talk about any subcommittee of the, for that matter, cabinet. You can say, forward the same argument regarding SIFC. But the honest answer is that there is a framework, and when there is a document that has created a body, then it becomes a legitimate body, and it is actually taking an action in light of government policies, nothing else. So why would anybody say that it is not legitimate for that matter?
All right, Faisal, regarding the execution that Farooq raised also, that's an important point, of course, and it has been answered by the caretaker setup in a lot of ways, and the Foreign Office, that this is going to be something that's conducted in phases, and those that don't have the relevant travel documents are going to be repatriated before the arrest. And of course, this also allows for perhaps a voluntary movement towards the home countries as well. And we've seen certain other countries also starting the exercise of taking in those that are eligible to go in their country, especially the Afghan nationals, such as Britain. And so I want to understand then, in so far in what we've seen, and of course more is going to be seen after the deadline, how prepared do you think that the federal government and the provinces are at this point in time, especially with regards to the deportation centers that is announcing, and the way that the rights of the people, especially those that are women or the elderly, are respected?
Sana, if we look at the current situation, of course, there are so many of the illegal immigrants who had no papers at all in Pakistan. Of course, voluntarily they have been going back, and then at the same time there is a setup by the government itself, provincial governments as well. They are obviously supporting it as well, and there is a setup that is making sure that if their help is required, that help is extended to them to, of course, send them over. And by the way, earlier obviously we are talking about that there are sort of allegation on Pakistan that Pakistan is somehow being cruel about it. It is not that. And first of all, I mean, everyone is focusing on the illegal immigrants from our neighboring Afghanistan. That is not the case. It is for all of the immigrants who've been living obviously within Pakistan without any papers, without registering themselves to the relevant corners. They would have, if they had any papers, then of course it wouldn't be taken place against them. And everyone is highlighting the extraordinary measures which are being taken by Pakistan, but nobody is talking about the extraordinary situation which Pakistan has been facing, which Farooq earlier rightly pointed out. Of course, they are a sort of burden on Pakistan's fragile economy itself, and they are, of course, somehow there are a few of the elements within them. Of course, they have a lot to contribute when it comes to, making Pakistan's security fragile as well. I mean, there are so many of the terrorism related incidents in which the involvement was of the illegals. They were unaccounted for, and of course if they are not accounted for, then how to proceed towards them. So Pakistan is facing dire and extraordinary conditions, extraordinary situations. That's how the governments do, and this is what the government should be doing, to secure their own people first, to secure its own economy first, and that's how the things move on. And by the way, it is moral enough of any government to maintain it that if the extraordinary situations are arising, then measures must be taken to, of course, safeguard ourselves first. Right. And that is what is taking place, and probably the current government plus the Foreign Office, it has rightly highlighted that this is how it should be. And of course Pakistan is doing it, and there will be, you know, questions raised on Pakistan, but at the same time,
no, hang on. Why raise questions? I'm sick and tired of explaining to the world what exactly we are doing. Tell me, why is under which law is UK deporting its illegal immigrants to Rwanda? Tell me how many people keep on perishing and suffering in American ICE centers, immigration centers. Australia, the way they have the kind of ghettos created for illegal immigrants. I mean, we are doing something humane. We are saying that you're coming from next door, we are returning you peacefully, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that every time, because somehow everybody thinks that we are weak or we are suffering, that's why they keep on piling on? Otherwise, why not? Charity begins at home. UN is based in America and the West. Start there and improve there, you know, do something about fortress Europe and the way people are suffering there.
Right,
and
absolutely.
And Farooq, one last point, you have excellently pointed it out, and one very important thing, we know how many ships they were sunk in Mediterranean. Obviously, they were going from the North African side and
and that of course is
Greece,
and we
the way Greece has destroyed our people.
We don't want that situation, of course, in Pakistan, and we really hope that the execution of this entire process is done right. And the Foreign Office has also called for the international partners to actually come forward and facilitate Pakistan with regards to the refugees within the country, in fact, the world over. So that is something that we're going to continue doing, working with our international partners, and of course taking a look at Pakistan's own interests as well. That's all we have from the debate. Thank you, Farooq. Thank you, Faisal. That's all that we have. We'll see you tomorrow.